it's all well and good talking about it in theory in terms of like, being strategic with manipulating carbohydrates throughout the day, but from a practical perspective, how does that actually work in hockey, for example?
Yeah, so it's good to talk through a couple of example days of what we would do. So generally a hockey week in our training would look like 2 high days, we'll class them as, a day off in the middle of the week, a lighter day, and then another high day. So if I talk, for example, through a high day, what does that look like? So they'd enter a 2-hour pitch session in the morning, which is long in duration, 2 hours, but also high intensity. So we'd ask them to fuel up with a high carb breakfast before that session, and practically for a lot of the girls that would look like a big bowl of porridge with a banana, some seeds on, some honey, for example, and potentially for some of them even a snack before they enter the session. After that, they'll then have a lunch, and we tend to go quite balanced in our lunches because the afternoon session will be almost moderate. So when I say balanced, if that's a visual of a plate, a third of that is carbohydrate, a third of that is protein and maybe veg or salad. And then they may go into a gym session which might be moderate based. We'd have a recovery snack after that, which provides some carbs and protein, maybe a smoothie with protein powder in there. And then in their evening, we'd ask them to manipulate that evening meal to what is the following day. If that was on a Tuesday, for example, and they're going into a day off, they don't need a high carb evening meal as long as they've recovered straight after the session. So that might be then that we actually get them to look at that plate and slightly lower the portion of carbohydrate and instead put a little bit more protein on their plate, maybe a bigger piece of fish with a bit more salad and veg. Going into then the day off, it's funny because we talk about they don't have to fully remove carbohydrate. They have recovered from the day before because they've done that in their immediate, and they've slightly lowered their evening meal anyway. So that breakfast in the morning still will have some carbohydrate, but it will have a good quality protein in there. So we might ask them, rather than the big bowl of porridge, to go eggs with some avocado on toast, for example. Their lunch would stay relatively balanced again, but then their evening meal will be planning for the following day, which is back to a moderate to high session. So we then get them to put the carbs back in. So, practically all we're getting them to do is literally swap things in and out. And a big one for me is around their snacks. We always encourage them to keep regularity of eating. So they really will never go longer than 3 hours probably without having something. But the difference would be on a training day, that might be a banana or a smoothie that's relatively high in carbs, versus a bag of biltong or a Greek yogurt with a few nuts and seeds in on a day off, which is more protein based. And it's funny because they find that concept very, very easy. Just switch in, here's a list of higher protein snacks, here's a list of higher carb snacks. These are your heavy training days, these are your light days and your days off. Just swap them in and out. Practical way to do it.
Yeah, simple, and it's brilliant as well, the way it's not just, even though the training days are of different intensities, that actually every meal within the day is matched to what's happened before and what's happening after. So it is that meal by meal approach to the whole week. And that whole week is mapped out in a pretty simple way. It's one of 3 options at any given stage.